Nature plays a powerful role in the Bay Area's resilience. The Bay Area's people, cities, and lands need critical help as our climate dramatically changes. Taking the right actions to prepare for wildfires, extreme flooding, and prolonged drought while focusing on our most vulnerable communities and lands is itself a complex puzzle. We believe the Bay Area can build resilience to climate change equitably, centering nature and people in our solutions. From open spaces that buffer us from wildfire while also sequestering carbon, to green infrastructure absorbing stormwater, recharging our groundwater, and cooling our cities. Protecting nature can protect Bay Area communities from the impacts of climate change, which is why Greenbelt Alliance is connecting with the power of nature to solve the puzzle of how to realize a resilient Bay Area.
To do this, we're focusing on data-driven and innovative nature-based policy solutions and the much-needed regional collaboration to plan and invest in resilient communities. We work across geographical boundaries at the local, regional, and state level to educate people across the 9 counties of the Bay Area about climate resilience, advocate for bold change, and collaborate to address the climate crisis. The time is now to work together and use the power of nature to solve the resilience puzzle.
We know in California, climate impacts are here. This summer, more acreage has burned through catastrophic wildfire than in any full year in the last 50 years. In the last decade, we've suffered through a mega drought, one of the worst in history, as well as emergency flooding. We face sea level rise and coastal erosion and extreme heat. And we know these impacts are here. What we haven't done enough of is understand how nature can provide solutions in allowing us to continue to thrive amidst climate change. Wetland throughout the Bay Area plays a critical role in our climate resilience, both soaking up storm surge and that extreme weather to reduce flooding risks, but then also helping recharge groundwater basins that provide an important drought-proof water supply. We need to better understand what are these resilience hotspots across the state, lands that we need to conserve and protect. With this partnership with the Greenbelt Alliance, we'll understand better at the state where we should make our public investments. The work that the Alliance is going to do, really helping to identify these resilience hotspots, will be critical to our agency's investments in coming years.
Our Greenbelt Alliance Climate Risk Research Program will build on the incredible research our partners and that we've done over time, putting that together to give Bay Area decision makers the tools they need to protect the lands that are most valuable. Greenbelt Alliance has traditionally put out a Bay Area Lands at Risk report, a set of maps that help guide where the lands are that are biggest risk for sprawl development. Our new Climate Risk Research Program will build on that effort, putting together maps and data that will help us guide where our advocacy efforts can be most successful and will help other organizations and agencies around the region work together and prioritize the lands that are at greatest risk and provide the greatest benefit in nature-based solutions to build our regional resilience.
The Bay Area is no stranger to climate change. People across the region are being displaced by catastrophic wildfires and extreme flooding, and the total cost of damages and recovery from disasters is only rising. We need to understand the importance of nature-based solutions and natural infrastructure, and the multiple benefits that accrue to communities in adapting to a different climate future. Coyote Valley is truly a 21st century greenbelt and one of the best examples we have in the Bay Area of putting the multiple benefits of nature to work for our communities, providing natural flood protection, clean water, local agriculture and food security, wildlife connectivity, and the public health benefits that come with public outdoor recreation. There can and should be many opportunities to replicate what we're doing here in Coyote Valley across the Bay Area, using nature to increase resilience. I'm excited that Greenbelt Alliance is tackling head-on how to apply nature-based solutions to climate change and to integrate them into local land use planning and policy decisions. Greenbelt Alliance is the perfect regional environmental nonprofit to identify where we should be directing our precious resources to protect our critical landscapes and make them a permanent part of our resilience strategy.
All of us are feeling the impacts of climate change right now, but the reality is that not all of us are impacted equally. our low income and communities of color are disproportionately impacted by climate change. Through our Accelerating Climate Resilience program, we will educate local, regional, and state agencies and government leaders on what are the most climate resilient land use policies to prioritize to build resilience, including nature-based solutions. We bring forth the guidance, the tools, template language, as well as the arguments for why we need to accelerate our resilience to climate change now so that all of us can play a role in that future planning for a resilient Bay Area.
When we think about communities of the future here in the Bay, there's a few things that are common to where we need to head. Landscapes that are vulnerable to flooding, fire, sea level rise. But once we decide where we want to put housing, new services, transportation infrastructure, it's important to give people choices. Having available in a particular footprint a mix of housing and services and education so that you can bike or walk to these areas instead of having to drive your car. Vulnerable communities need to be at the forefront of our minds in terms of planning and action, making sure that folks are housed, that there are affordable means of traveling around the region. This idea of mixed-use development and mixed-use communities, we need to think in parallel about the open spaces that they need for their well-being. Greenbelt Alliance is an example of a coalition, and I think importantly, a philosophy that we need to bring to the table as we tackle these multi-sectoral issues. Greenbelt Alliance has been able to evolve with the challenges and assume a leadership in bringing that voice to the table with governmental entities, with other stakeholders, and importantly, with the public.
As a result of decades of redlining and other discriminatory land use practices, many of the Bay Area's most vulnerable residents live along the shoreline and in vulnerable areas. We're advocating for climate-smart development, sustainable, mixed, affordable, resilient, and transit-oriented. Climate-smart development centers equity and climate justice to make sure that everybody has access to a safe, healthy place to live, and parks and open spaces to make their lives healthier.
Overlooking the role that nature can play in protecting us from climate change is detrimental to our chances of curbing the climate crisis. Our team is educating, advocating, and collaborating to ensure the Bay Area's lands and communities are resilient to a changing climate so that communities have cleaner air, shorter commutes, and a safer future under a changing climate, and where we are living with nature in new and powerful ways for generations to come.